Hey ARMY! Stop whatever you are doing right now, because what just happened in the music world is something you absolutely cannot miss. If you have been a fan of Jimin for any amount of time, whether you have been here since the very beginning, or you just discovered him recently, this video is going to hit different. And I mean that in the most serious way possible. Because today, we are not just talking about another compliment from another artist. We are not talking about another chart milestone or another achievement. Today, we are talking about something much bigger than that. Today, the world's eyes finally opened because one of the most respected producers and songwriters in the entire Western music industry sat down on camera and told the truth about Jimin. The truth that we in the ARMY have known for years. And the fact that this confirmation came from someone like Ryan Tedder makes it impossible for anyone to look away. So if you are ready to hear everything, and I mean everything, make sure you are comfortable, make sure you hit that like button before we even start, and let's get into it. Let's set the stage first, because context matters here. Ryan Tedder is not just some random producer. This is a man who has won 4 Grammy Awards. This is the man who co-wrote Halo for Beyoncé, one of the most iconic pop songs of the last 2 decades. He wrote Happier for Ed Sheeran. He has worked with Taylor Swift, Adele, Paul McCartney, Maroon 5, and the list goes on and on. When Ryan Tedder speaks about an artist, the entire music industry listens. He has been at the top of the songwriter and producer world for well over 15 years. So when a man with that kind of resume opens his mouth and starts talking about Jimin, you better believe the world is paying attention. And what did Ryan Tedder say? He appeared on the Zach Sang Show, one of the most watched music interview platforms in the United States, and he made a statement that sent the entire ARMY into a frenzy. He looked straight into that camera and said that anyone out there who thinks HYB or Bang PD is pulling the strings on BTS, they are wrong. He said BTS is picking everything. They are writing the lyrics. They are choosing the songs. They are setting the direction. He said, and I am being as close to his words as possible, there are no strings being pulled. Not one. This is their music, their decisions, their vision, completely. Now take a second and really absorb what that means. Because this is not a fan defending their idol. This is not a journalist speculating. This is not some insider rumor. This is Ryan Tedder, a man who was literally inside the studio working on the Ararang album with BTS, giving the world a first-hand, ground-level account of exactly how that creative process worked. He was there. He saw it with his own eyes. And what he saw was a group of 7 men who are completely, totally, and fully in control of their own artistry. But here is where it gets really personal for those of us who love Jimin specifically. Because Ryan Tedder's relationship with Jimin did not start with Ararang. This connection goes back to 2024, when Ryan Tedder co-wrote and co-produced Be Mine, the 5th track on Jimin's second solo album, Muse, which was released on July 19, 2024. Be Mine is an Afrobeat-influenced track with a beautifully direct expression of love, and the collaboration between Jimin and Ryan Tedder on that song created something that clearly left a lasting impression on both of them. And here's the part that made even more noise when it came out. In December 2025, Ryan Tedder sat down for an interview with the YouTube channel Mui, and he was asked to name a song he is particularly proud of. Now think about that question for a second. This man has thousands of songs in his career. He has written for the biggest names in the music business. He could have named anything. He could have named Halo. He could have talked about his work with Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran. But what did Ryan Tedder say? He said he is proud of Be Mine, the song he made with Jimin. He said, and I want you to really hear this. He said they wrote that song quickly. It came together fast. And then months later, he found out it was going to be released as the second single from Muse. He said he opened the Korean music charts, and Be Mine was sitting at number 2. He described his own reaction as shocked. He said it happened so fast, so unexpectedly, and that he is genuinely proud of how well that song performed. For a man who writes hits for a living, for a man who almost never gets surprised by chart performance because he has seen it all, the fact that Jimin's music genuinely caught him off guard says everything about the level of artistry that Jimin brings to the table. But the story does not stop there. Let's fast forward to February 24th, 2026. Ryan Tedder is performing as the opening act for One Republic's concert called From Asia with Love at the Jamsil Arena in Seoul. He is standing in front of a sold-out Korean audience, and he decides to say something important. He tells that crowd that he has recently done a significant amount of work on BTS's upcoming album. At that point, Arirang had not yet been released. And then he says something that sent shockwaves through the global music community. He said that working on Arirang absolutely blew him away. He said it is honestly one of the craziest things he has worked on in his entire career. His entire career. Not one of the craziest K-pop things. Not one of the craziest things in the last 5 years. In his entire career. Let that sink in. Ryan Tedder, a man with 4 Grammy Awards, a man who has shaped the sound of Western pop music for a decade and a half, is calling BTS's comeback album one of the most remarkable projects he has ever been part of. And he is saying this in Seoul, directly to Korean fans, with full transparency and full sincerity. Now let's talk about what he actually contributed to Arirang, because the numbers speak for themselves. Ryan Tedder is credited on 5 tracks on the album. 5 tracks out of 14. He worked on Body to Body, Swim, Normal, Please, and Merry-Go-Round. That is a remarkable amount of involvement for any single contributor on a BTS album. And when you listen to those tracks, when you feel the sonic depth of Swim, which became BTS's lead single and went on to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, you understand why Ryan Tedder was so moved by this project. This was not a session where a producer showed up, laid down a beat, and left. This was deep, collaborative, creative work. And now back to what he said on the Zach Sang show, because this is the heart of everything. He made it very clear, in no uncertain terms, that the narrative some people have tried to push, the idea that HYB or Bang PD or some invisible corporate hand is controlling what BTS makes, what they say, how they perform, that narrative is completely false. He was in the room. He sat at the same table as these men. He heard their ideas. He watched them make decisions. He saw them reject things that did not feel right and push for things that did. And his testimony is simple. BTS is the one making the calls. Now I need you to understand why this matters so much in 2026. Because even after everything BTS has accomplished, after the Grammy nominations, after the sold-out stadiums, after the Billboard #1s, after the global recognition that no K-pop group has ever come close to matching, there are still people out there who want to minimize what BTS is. There are still people who want to dismiss them as manufactured, as a product, as a machine that is operated by a company rather than driven by genuine artistic vision. And for years, armies have been defending the truth against this narrative. We have been pointing to the writing credits, pointing to the production credits, pointing to the interviews where the members themselves talk about their creative process. But there is always going to be someone who dismisses a fan's defense as bias. But they cannot dismiss Ryan Tedder. This man has no reason to praise BTS beyond what is true. He is not a fan. He is not managed by HYB. He does not benefit in any particular way from defending BTS's creative autonomy. He is simply telling the world what he witnessed. And what he witnessed is what we have always known. Jimin, and the rest of BTS, are real artists who make real creative choices and build real, meaningful music from the inside out. Let's zoom in specifically on Jimin now, because that is why you are here, and because his contribution to Arirang is something that deserves its own spotlight. Jimin is credited as a songwriter on They Don't Know About Us and Into the Sun. And what happened with They Don't Know About Us is absolutely worth discussing in depth. That track, a hip-hop and trap track with vintage sensibilities, debuted at number 56 on the US Billboard Hot 100. It then continued in the chart's second week, landing at number 94. That means They Don't Know About Us spent 2 consecutive weeks on the Hot 100. And internationally, it hit the top of iTunes charts in 32 countries and regions, including Mexico, Norway, and Brazil. Billboard's own album review of Arirang highlighted Jimin's vocal performance on that track specifically, noting that his extended vocal tone in the chorus is a standout element that demonstrates his ability to anchor hip-hop adjacent productions just as convincingly as ballads. Let me say that again. Billboard, one of the most authoritative music publications in the world, singled out Jimin's vocals on a song that he helped write, on a group album, as something remarkable and notable. Canadian music station Much Music also highlighted They Don't Know About Us as the first standout track when they reviewed Arirang. Musician Brown Tigger praised Jimin's vocal range and evolution as an artist in connection with that same song. This is the picture that is forming, not just inside the ARMY fandom, but in the broader critical music world. And we should not forget what Jimin accomplished during the years he was preparing to return to BTS. While he was fulfilling his mandatory military service, while Arirang was being imagined and planned, Jimin's existing music was still making waves. In September 2024, The Hollywood Reporter named Jimin the 11th biggest artist of that year in their list of the top 25 platinum power players, making him the only K-pop soloist on that entire ranking. He was listed alongside Beyoncé, Eminem, Billie Eilish, and Post Malone. Think about that. Jimin was not even actively promoting music. He was in the military, and he was still being recognized as one of the most impactful artists of the year by one of Hollywood's most respected publications. In February 2026, just weeks before Arirang dropped, Jimin ranked #1 in the individual boy group brand reputation rankings for the 57th time. The 57th time. No other male K-pop idol in history has reached #1 more times than Jimin in that category. And he held the top position for 35 consecutive months, the only artist, male or female, in any category, to achieve that kind of sustained dominance. And this is the person Ryan Tedder is talking about when he says he is proud of their collaboration. This is the person who made a Grammy-winning producer feel genuinely surprised and genuinely moved. This is the person who contributed to a project that one of music's most seasoned professionals called one of the most incredible things he has ever worked on. And while we are here, I think we also need to take a step back and talk about what Jimin was building during the years before Arirang, because that context is everything. When BTS went on hiatus and the members began their mandatory military service, a lot of people in the general public assumed that would be the end of their momentum. And for Jimin specifically, there were people who genuinely questioned whether he could hold his own as a solo artist outside the group dynamic. His first solo album, Face, had already answered part of that question. Like Crazy became the first Korean-language song by a solo artist to debut at #1 on the US Billboard Hot 100. But Jimin was not done proving himself. In July 2024, he returned with Muse, his second solo album, and demonstrated a level of creative maturity that stopped even industry veterans in their tracks. He held songwriting and composing credits on 6 of the 7 tracks on that album. 6 out of 7. On his own project, Jimin was not just the face of the music, he was one of the primary architects of it. And that is exactly the kind of artist that Ryan Tedder encountered when he walked into the studio to work on Be Mine. He was not working with someone who shows up to sing what they are given. He was working with someone who has a genuine point of view, a genuine voice, and a genuine investment in every creative decision being made. That is the Jimin that Ryan Tedder brought into the Arirang sessions. That is the Jimin who contributed to They Don't Know About Us and Into the Sun. And that is the Jimin that the entire world is now being forced to reckon with, whether they were paying attention before or not. Let's also take a moment to acknowledge the bigger picture of Arirang, because understanding the full scope of this album helps us understand why Ryan Tedder's words carry so much weight. BTS spent the summer of 2025 living together in Los Angeles, all 7 members under one roof for the first time since 2019. They were not just recording an album, they were reconnecting as people, as brothers, as collaborators who had each spent years developing individually before coming back together. According to Rolling Stone's reporting, that time together in Los Angeles was transformative. They were there from July through November 2025, creating what would become Arirang from the inside out. And the way they worked was exactly what Ryan Tedder described on the Zach Sang show. The members were hands-on at every step. RM has writing credits on 13 of the 14 tracks. Suga and J-Hope are credited across multiple songs. Jungkook has writing credits on 4 tracks. V contributed to 2. And Jimin contributed to 2 tracks as well, both They Don't Know About Us and Into the Sun. These are not token credits. These are not situations where a label attaches an artist's name to a credit for marketing purposes. These are real contributions, verified by Conca registrations and confirmed by everyone who was in that studio. Ryan Tedder knew that when he walked in to work with them. And he walked in as a world-class professional who has worked with virtually every major pop star of the last 20 years. He has seen how other artists operate. He knows the difference between an artist who is truly making decisions and an artist who is being told what to do. And his conclusion, after spending significant time working alongside BTS on 5 separate tracks, was absolutely clear. Now I want to ask you something directly, because I think it matters. How many times have you been in a conversation where someone tried to tell you that Jimin's success is manufactured? How many times have you tried to explain, calmly, with evidence, with respect, that the music speaks for itself, that the songwriting credits speak for themselves, that the passion Jimin brings to every single performance is not something a company can fabricate? If you are a longtime ARMY, you know those conversations. You know how exhausting it can be to defend something that feels so obviously true to you. And now Ryan Tedder has walked in and done it for us. Not because we asked him to, not because there was any strategic reason for it, but because he was asked about his experience, and he simply told the truth. He said BTS makes their own music. He said Jimin is an artist he is genuinely proud to have worked with. He said Be Mine is something he is proud of, not as a commercial product, but as a piece of music that surprised even him. That kind of organic, unprompted validation from someone of his stature is rare. It is the kind of thing that does not happen unless the artist being described is genuinely special. And Jimin is genuinely special, something that Ryan Tedder now knows firsthand, something that the Billboard chart history confirms, something that 57 consecutive brand reputation rankings at #1 reflect, and something that every single person in this community has understood for years. Let's also take a second to appreciate the journey that brought us here. Because Arirang did not just happen overnight. It is the product of years of individual growth, years of personal sacrifice, years of military service that kept BTS away from the music they love. When Jimin revealed on a Weverse livestream on November 1st, 2025 that the album was finished, when he said, "Guys, we just finished recording," the emotion in that moment was palpable. He knew what it meant. He knew what was coming. And he knew that what BTS had created was something that would remind the world of exactly who they are. Arirang was released on March 20th, 2026. All 14 tracks. A 41-minute statement from a group that had been away from full group releases since 2020. The lead single, Swim, hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The tour that followed, the Arirang World Tour, kicked off on April 9th at Goyang Stadium and is scheduled to run through March 2027, spanning 85 shows across 34 cities in 23 countries. This is the largest world tour in BTS history. And it is happening because the music is that powerful. And the music is that powerful because of what Ryan Tedder confirmed, because BTS, including Jimin, made it themselves. They chose it. They wrote it. They directed it. They put their full selves into it. Nobody pulled their strings. Nobody handed them a formula and told them to follow it. This is their art, their voice, their story. Here is what I want you to take away from today's video. The next time someone tries to tell you that Jimin is just a product, remember Ryan Tedder sitting in that Zach Sang interview and saying there are no strings being pulled. Remember that the same man who wrote Halo called Be Mine something he is genuinely proud of. Remember that Billboard praised Jimin's vocals on a track he helped write. Remember the 57 #1s. Remember the Hollywood Reporter list. Remember Arirang, built in a house in Los Angeles by 7 men who poured everything they had back into the music they love. And then remember that this is just the beginning. The Arirang World Tour is still unfolding. The music is still growing. Jimin's journey as an artist, a real, creative, autonomous, extraordinary artist, is still writing new chapters every single day. So ARMY, if today's video showed you something new, if it reminded you of why you fell in love with Jimin in the first place, or if it gave you the perfect words to share with someone who still does not understand what we see in him, please give this video a like. It takes 1 second, and it means everything for this channel. Share it with a friend who needs to hear this. Drop your reaction in the comments. I want to know, what was the moment that first made you realize that Jimin was something truly different? Tell me down below, because reading your stories is genuinely one of my favorite things. And if you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button right now, because we're going to keep bringing you content like this. Accurate, verified, ARMY-first coverage of everything happening in Jimin's world and BTS's world throughout this entire comeback era and beyond. The world's eyes are open now. Ryan Tedder made sure of that, and we are here to make sure you never miss a single moment of what comes next. See you in the next one, ARMY. I purple you.